If you want to make a super cute little keepsake box and you don't want to spend a lot of money, this is a great way to go about doing it. First off, we're just going to take some random scraps like this and then run them through the table saw to whatever width you want it to be, roughly, for the fronts and the backs. And then I picked out a piece of wood for the bottom on this. This is going to be a very simple construction, and then we're going to go ahead and run this through the planer. There's a couple of quick passes through the planer. I think that looks gorgeous already. And now we're just going to cut those fronts and backs and the bottom piece to size. Those are a lot of shavings for 4 little glue ups. Now that we have the front and the back cut out for this box and the bottom selected, I'm going to go ahead and do a rough sanding on these before we put the box together itself, and then we'll select the lid. The next part of this assembly will probably make for some real riveting footage, but I thought I'd show it because it's actually pretty easy to put together. I like doing this style of box because, again, it's super simple to put together. It takes minimal clamping. I do like using butt joints when I like the end grain or when it's showing up pretty sharp. So that's why I've decided to go with the butt joints on these. And then we'll end up doing some Craig jig screws with some dowel plugs to cover it in. I don't ever worry too much about going super crazy with the amount of glue I use on this because it will have screws in there as well, and this is pretty stinking strong glue. Now that I've got that in the clamps, just gonna let it sit there for about 15, 20 minutes, something like that. It's not gonna fully dry or cure, but it'll be enough that I can start drilling these out to put the screws in there. Once I've given that an opportunity to dry a little bit, I'll go around and measure out where I'm going to drill in these Craig screws and then insert the dowel pins as well. I'll just use that 3/8 inch bit that comes with the Craig jig screws. And I like to put a little divot in each one of these areas so the drill bit doesn't walk too much. Got to be kind of careful because you don't have to go super deep, just enough to bury that head and be able to put a dowel pin in there. And that is plenty. Then just a regular, I think it's like an inch. And then we'll come back and I just cut up some of these 3/8 inch dowels and we'll put some glue in there and shove it in, let it dry, come back and sand it off. Look at that goopy mess. So I just pour a little bit of glue down in there and push the dowel pin in, and then it just comes squishing out, but that's okay. These little risers here, I'm going to leave until that sets up, probably 30 minutes or so, and then I just come back with one of these cool little flush cut saws and I'll cut those down flat, and then we'll move over to the sander. I've had some friends ask me why I use the screws and the dowel pins, and number one, I like the mechanical fastener of the screw. You don't have to use clamps as long when you put that in there. And then I just like the way that that dowel pin contrasts with whatever wood that you're putting in there. So usually turns out pretty good. So we've given this plenty of time for the glue to set up around those dowel pins, and now just going through and finishing these off. And I'm not too worried about scarring the wood there because we're going to take it over to the belt sander here in just a minute. Now you can kind of start to see the contrast in those dowel pins and the cedar. And now we'll turn our attention to the lid. Just a very simple, basic lid. Went ahead and glued up a couple pieces of oak scrap that I had, and then for a little bit of flair, just cut a groove down the side of those and put a little bit of cedar in there. You can see where we put through the planer, got a few marks on there, but we're going to get the lid attached and then come back and do some sanding, round out some of those edges, and get a little closer to finishing this guy. But hinges are by far my least favorite thing to do on these boxes, so if you have any tips or tricks, I'd love to hear about them. So normally what I'll do is I'll put a little board underneath the box where that lid hangs over so that I've got all the pressure pushing flat right here, and I'll clamp it in the front so it gives me just a tiny bit of a gap in the back when I put that hinge on, and when the box lid closes, gives it a real snug fit down at the bottom. But this is generally how I will set that up before I place the hinges. Well, there is definitely a reason why I normally don't film myself putting the hinges on. It was a nightmare. But when in doubt, get bigger screws. I got that lid on now. Right and tight. Now we got to do a little bit more sanding, and we'll get ready to probably clear coat that thing. And last but not least, just a little bit of a spray coat. That's probably not a great shot with my arm right in front of the camera. And that wood is super soft. Probably have to come back and do that a couple times. But that is it in a nutshell. I really like the way those colors turned out. I don't normally spray inside of the box or the underside of the lid. Once that cedar, or once that polyurethane dries, you'll be able to smell that cedar on the inside of the box. And I like to be able to show what that raw wood looks like. I decided I had to do one more shot of that end grain, try to justify why it is. I like to use those butt joints sometimes. That cedar sure is pretty. But for reals this time. Thanks for watching.